Bernard Tobin here at the Agricultural Excellence Conference in New Brunswick, here in Fredericton, joined now by Dick Wittman from all the way from Idaho. You found some snow.
I did.
How was the travel?
It was a moral victory. Only 4 airplanes instead of 5 to get here.
I want to talk to you about your presentation. Just talking about, management tactics for leading farmers, and how we need to run a professional business.
Well, I think we always start with the end in mind. One of Stephen Covey's favorite sayings. And if we would aspire to be a professionally managed family farm business, we think about all those 5 words: a professionally managed family farm business. What does it mean? And I think there's very specifics that go into the path to getting there that we need to tune up in our management processes. And if we don't, we have bad consequences that happen in our operations.
Because that's what you said. I mean, a lot of times perfectly viable, economically well-run farms fail. And it's not the economics. Quite often it's the personality and the management.
Yeah, exactly. We fail to have a clearly defined vision, values, what our mission is. There's no clearly defined roles and responsibilities in the business. We don't have a defined process for policies and SOPs that we follow. We don't have a clearly defined set of metrics that we monitor and measure. And then there's not a culture that's clearly defined for how we communicate and how do we as a team commit to professionalism.
Mm-hmm. As I say, you're running through a lot of your presentation here today, and you had 6 or 7 real key parts, to how to avoid those strategies. And one of them that really struck me was make sure we put the right people in the right seats.
Yes.
And that's so important.
I think there's a preconceived idea that everybody that's in the blood pool should get a chance. And I'm not opposed to them being given consideration, but what's the criteria for whether or not they should be a member of your ownership or management team? They should have to demonstrate that not an entitlement attitude, but a school of merit, that I'm willing to earn my way, that I'm willing to be paid a wage that's reasonable based on the market, that I'm willing to commit to a teamwork approach and accountability to others. Those are business principles that any business must adhere to, but oftentimes family businesses look the other way and go, well, since they're family, we don't have to do this.
Yeah.
And I just don't agree with that. I think that's the beginning of a cancer that can explode.
You mentioned as well, you really need to separate the train tracks.
Yes.
There's a difference between ownership and labor management.
Yes, absolutely. And many, many years ago, the model in agriculture was if you came back to the farm, eventually it was expected you would be an owner. And if you were going to own, you couldn't own without being on the farm. That model is obsolete. With the capital required in agriculture today, we need to have all combinations possible. There are some who will want to work on the farm, but they don't have capital and they're afraid of risk and they just want to be an employee and operate equipment. And there are some family members who would like to be an investor in the family business and are willing to take a reasonable return, but they have other careers where they want to work off the farm and they're willing to work in the form of an investor or a board member, and they understand those boundaries, where that's fine too. And then there are those who are very okay to be involved in labor and management, but also are interested in an ownership track. So having all 3 of those alternatives available to us as foundations for succession are important. And if we clearly separate the disciplines of who needs to own the business and what's the capital it needs and who can best provide that capital and understands how to evaluate financial statements and meet capital calls when they're required, those should be your investors. And those people that need to work and manage the business should be based on their skill sets and their experience. But oftentimes, we try to mix those 2 together and we don't make good decisions about each one of those tracks separately.
I want to talk about the fact that it's always a problem. We don't start the process fast enough, quick enough. And you really have, for owners, you have to sort of reduce that retirement fear.
Well, 2 things there. One is we tend to wait until we have our first heart attack to think about succession. And instead, we should be thinking that the minute we have a child and we have an idea that we've created a legacy that's worth passing on, how do we communicate and start educating the next generation of what the opportunities are in that business and what the expectations are to be able to become eligible for either entering the ownership path or a labor management path? So the policies we follow in terms of how we compensate people, how we communicate with them, how we give them responsibilities and delegated authority, the sooner we start that young and do it like a business, the more we attract successors. And then on the other end of that, you talk about retiring or reducing retirement fear. The traditional view in many farms is the career path is I start as a grunt, I become an assistant manager, then I become the CEO, and then I have to die. Because they view being the manager as the end of the career. When in fact, we need to look at the next step in that career, which is being the board chairman, the transition coach, the mentor. We've already trained succession to manage the business. We're ready for someone else to take over the day-to-day responsibilities of operations. But because we're oftentimes a major investor in the business, we need to stay involved. And so how do we find a way for the senior talent who's used to be the manager to get out of the way but not go away? And that place to go is functioning more in the role of a board chairman or in the creating a more transparent role of a board of directors. This is something that's simply not on most farm family businesses' horizon.
You want to talk about as well, committing to accountability. That has to start right at the top, go through the whole organization.
Yes. So there's a management theory that says when you delegate authority, that's the time that you put accountability in place. So when I give someone in a job description and say, here's your duties and responsibilities, if I don't at the same time say, you're reporting to me and you're going to get an evaluation in 1 year from now, and we're going to see how that's going, if we don't leave the accountability mechanism defined at the time we delegate, then we have just let the cat out of the bag and said, do whatever you want. Or people rely on informal feedback that oftentimes is done in the spirit of anger or frustration, and it's not professionally done, nor is it timely done. So I think more family businesses need to realize that having a professional performance review process as part of your professional culture is not only needed, but it's essential for business improvement.
Now, you've run a large family farm, 20,000 acres, Idaho, cattle, timber. You've been an ag lender, done a lot of consulting, run your own consulting group now with Wittman. For farmers, where do they start this process? Final question, where do they start?
Well, I think they start by, they can go to the website and download my proficiency test, which simply asks them a series of best practices. Where are you in this journey? Are you doing these things now, or are these things that you should be doing, you need it, but you're not doing it? Once you do that and then score yourself, then you can look at how many of these things can I do myself versus where would I look to for help? There are mentors, there are coaches, there are advisors, many different ways that we can get through this journey. If we had a professional advisor or a business coach to work with us, and then maybe we join a peer group of other farmers who are trying to do some of the same things, so we can do some group think and some group problem solving. Maybe we consider putting an advisory board in place for our operation to coach us from the outside. There's many, many tools to get there. I'm a firm believer that farmers, because we are independent and we like to do things ourselves, they can purchase my guidebook and walk through the how-to manual and do a lot of this stuff themselves. Once they reach a point where they've stubbed their toe and they say, this is too sensitive or too complicated, I need help, then bring in the professionals to help you take it to the finish line. But don't just say, that's a great idea, but I don't know when I'll ever get to it because I have to go farm. Because if this is not viewed, if running a professional business and putting in the practices to be there are not as important as farming, you won't survive.
Hey Dick, some great insights today. Hey, thanks for stopping by.
You bet, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.